Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to this episode of LocalHost. I'm here with Amy Tobey, who is a senior principal engineer. So welcome, Amy.
Hi.
In Traceroute, as you're one of the hosts there, you were all covering about artificial intelligence. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, what was happening was the whole world's talking about AI, and we thought, well, why don't we add more voices to the cacophony? But really, more seriously, we wanted to bring the traceroute angle to this, which is we tend to get more into kind of the externalities of technology a lot in traceroute. And I feel like that's something we did really well with these episodes is talk about not just, the bits and bytes and what people are doing that everybody can see, but a little bit about like what are the effects and like what are the consequences of this.
So speaking of that, how would you design a system? So aside from the consequences, because that's the aftermath, how would you kind of build one of these, I guess, like these like AI platforms?
Like a chat GPT?
Well, sure, like a chat GPT. Like, I mean,
Sure.
so you're going into it thinking, okay, what problems do I have to solve, and what
Uh-huh.
kind of user input would I be expecting?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, that's you asked the right question first, right? We have to work backwards from it as a product and say like what problems am I solving? And that should drive the technology. It doesn't always, right? Because one of the things we see happening in AI right now is there's a lot of technology out there looking for a buyer, and AI is a really good way to sell some of it. Um so like that's one of the first problems we have to get over is not just choosing tech for tech's sake, but to solve an actual problem people have. And in that case, for very large models, there's only a few solutions that are really viable today. And for kind of the smaller models, there's a bajillion different ways to solve it that they've been around for a little while now.
Do you think that chat GPT is the first almost like pop culture sort of like experience of people to know what AI is? Because I feel
Not
like,
even
I mean,
close. Not even
no?
close.
Okay.
No. I mean, like, depending on how you define AI, and those of us who are have been around a while, um, AI today, what we call it, is still marketing for largely what we know as machine learning, and
Yeah.
it's nowhere near general intelligence. And so a lot of these techniques are pretty old. Now, I'm not going to say they haven't accelerated, but we can go back to, I remember one of my first experiences with something like an AI was the little ELIZA program. You could run it on DOS and on Unix, and it was just a little chatbot you could talk to, and it would give you kind of nonsensical answers, but that hasn't really changed very much, except that like occasionally you do get some relevance now.
I agree to a point, but when I think of like my mom being on the computer, she knows nothing about the old school operating systems or the old
Sure,
school
sure.
languages. And so I feel like that in terms of like a conversation during like Thanksgiving or something, d- just talking about chat GPT to my brother or my mom or to my friends who know nothing about software, they kind of like are like, oh wow, like this is like a new thing. And I'm the same as you. Like I'm thinking this has been around for 40 years. Like, I mean,
Uh-huh.
people have been constantly like, for example, when you do a search on a movie theater website, it will say, "Oh, you've liked this video, so you might like these other videos." Well, that in some
Yeah,
ways
recommendation
is
algorithms, yeah.
yeah. I mean, that is in essence
It's very
just
similar
machine learning.
technology. It's the
Yeah.
same, a lot of the same tech under the covers, yeah.
Mhm. And so those results just kind of, pretty much just live in a database now today, and that we're just smarter with how we're able to access that data.
And to go back to your question, right? What is pop culture's first real touch with this kind of code? And it's probably Google, right? Is
Mm.
the Google search engine. They started exploring these ML techniques for their search engine right at the beginning. That was their original innovation, was figuring out ways to apply machine learning techniques to the search space, because what you have is a huge parameter space with a ton of context that makes one site more relevant than another, and being able to do this match across like thousands of parameters to get you to what you're looking for. And so really it's probably Google in terms of mass application of AI. And I'm doing air quotes if you're only hear the audio,
Yeah, yeah.
um, in the real world.
One of the things like I've noticed though, as things progress, it's always a gradient. I feel like that there's no kind of like, wow moment in computers in a sense. I mean, there have been, but like, so for example, I was crossing the street the other day, and when you push the button that it tells you how many seconds that you have to cross, you push it and then it says 10, 9, 8. And every audio recording of that, you could tell that like it was just like an MP3. It was probably called like 10.mp3, 9.mp3. And so
Right. You can
as
hear the clipping.
you can hear the clipping and you know that it's just one word. And so today, what they're doing is the same thing, but instead of like the word 10, they're taking like the actual diphthong, like the t, ne, and like they're taking like every letter and they're just fine tuning it. And so like
Well, you're onto something
they're
there
they're
because
adding it all together. And it's the same thing that they were doing 20 years ago, just on a very more like finite detail. That's really
well,
it.
yeah, because we have more resources available. We
Mhm.
have better math available. We've gotten, these algorithms have been fleshed out. There's open source code around a lot of this. There's a lot deeper expertise, but it is a refinement of things that we've been able to do. And the funny thing when you said gradient is, like gradient descent is a really important algorithm in ML and AI. That's
Mm.
actually part of how we get to these, like for generating images. That's part of how you iterate towards that image that you want to deliver to the user is a gradient descent.
So is gradient descent a sort of like stable diffusion where you're almost like
It's part
using
of stable
text
diffusion.
text to pictures? Okay, okay.
Yeah, it's in all of them, right? Like it's because basically what we have to do is turn semantic information like text or images into math, right? And then the math we apply to the parameters that we extract from all that data
Hmm.
is a form of a gradient in a lot of cases.
It does seem like that these things that they're, and I'm sure that you would agree with this, is that it's almost like 50 different technologies added into one, because it's not just like this idea of like talking into the phone and then it kind of sends you back a picture of what you just said to it. And so all like each of those technologies, whether it's like an SMS text message or how to record an audio in a digital format, all these things have taken like in some sense almost like hundreds of years. I
Mhm.
mean, you could even say tens of thousands if you want to think about the like creation of language. Um, and then it's sending you back within 15 milliseconds, and it does feel magical, but when you break it down into its actual like very fine like details, it's really just a series of like, okay, this step and this step and this step, and it kind of makes sense. It kind of almost like takes the cloak off of the magic, although it is still pretty cool.
Sure. I mean,
Yeah.
but if you take me apart, right, you get mostly water, a little carbon, some salt, maybe a lot of salt in my case.
Yeah. Right.
It like yeah, like all of these any large working complex system is composed of many smaller less complex systems working in concert. And
Mm.
it does start to approach magic for especially people who don't understand all of those pieces. Is it the Arthur C. Clarke quote, right? Sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah,
And for people who don't work in tech, I think it really is hard to distinguish some of what we're doing today from magic.
for sure. I loved what you were talking about, how the word artificial intelligence is almost like the marketing term of machine learning. Do you think that those two terms should be sort of like interchangeable, or do you think that they should maybe live on their own because there are some maybe like discernible differences between those two? Because like, because at
This
what
ain't my
point?
first semantic battle, and I'm
No,
gonna
okay,
say it ain't worth the fight.
okay,
We lost, right? Like it's AI now. That's why I'll say AI. I don't qualify it all the time anymore. I used to for years. I'd be like, it's not AI, it's ML.
right, right, right.
But like the ship has sailed in pop culture, and it's not worth the fight. We could now GAI has emerged, so general AI, to distinguish like actual like high functioning intelligence from what we have today, right? And this will happen again because somebody's going to go and they're going to want to market their new thing as general AI, and it's not going to quite be there yet, but that marketing is so valuable to them, they don't care, right? This happened to DevOps. Same thing happened, right? Is a bunch of people had stuff to sell and they didn't really care what the impact was on the language.
It does seem like that the whole AI thing is a marketing ploy, not ploy. But my mom knows nothing about machine learning because she's never even heard the term, and it
Right.
sounds way too complicated. But she'll talk to you about like, what is artificial intelligence all day long. And
All
plus,
day long. Yeah. It's in the
and
pop culture. Yeah.
yeah, right. And
Age of Ultron.
well, you mentioned something cool. At least you had like alluded to it. Is that if you were to take any software product, it doesn't have to be for computers. It could be for how to like edit videos. If you put just the two letters AI next to it of your new release, it, you can charge more. You'll probably sell more, and everyone will think that it's super impressive. Yet it's really just like version 4 instead of version 3, but they put AI next to the name, and everyone thinks that it's more impressive.
Well, they're doing more inference. They're doing more forecasting, right? Like a lot of the stuff that we call AI out in the world now is it to most folks who are not technical, it looks like AI, right? Like a simple Holt Winters forecast in statistics is predicting the future statistically. To people, some people, that's an intelligent thing to do. And so monitoring vendors, they slap a sticker on it and say AI when it's a technique that's very old.
Yeah.
But now it's been operationalized to where it feels to people like it's artificial intelligence. And maybe that's the more important thing that's happening is it feels like intelligence.
So maybe it feels like that it's intelligence because it's not happening locally. I mean,
It
of
goes in the
course,
magic box and it comes out better.
right. And it does make sense because those computers in the magic box are 20 times more powerful than what you have locally. So it does
Hmm.
make sense that like maybe it is like the AI part of it, but it's really just a function, and it's just running
Sure.
through the box and it's sending you it back.
Maybe you're a function.
Yeah, maybe I'm just water and salt just running through a couple, well, I mean, well, so they said that humans make something like 40,000 decisions every day or something,
That
I
the
think
average human does.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That
Yeah.
sounds exhausting.
It does sound exhausting. Yeah. I mean, maybe that's why that we were both exhausted yesterday, just making too many decisions. Um, so, are there places on the internet that you think would be blocked by like Chat GPT or, or sort of like, a like artificial intelligence black hole?
Oh, there certainly are. Like, there's the easy one to point at is like the Department of Defense here in the U.S. Like that stuff ain't out on the open internet. It's never going to get ingested by Chat GPT.
Hmm.
Um, there's interesting happenings. Like IBM is talking more about Watson X these days, and they talk about how they actually can show the provenance of all of their training data, because they acquired it through kind of legitimate means, whereas some of the products out there today are just scraping the web to get their stuff. So there's a whole problem of like who gets paid for all of that content that trained the model. And then there is, as you mentioned, there's a bunch of places where stuff isn't just open on the internet. There's swaths of corporate information, like even just at my company, where we have all of our internal documentation, all this stuff. ChatGPT is never going to read that, nor should it, because I don't want that to necessarily leak into the model. Because the problem with models is once the model has taken the data in, it becomes part of the model and it's no longer extricable. The same way that once you see something, you can't unsee it. There's no such thing as eye bleach, right? Like if I give you some TMI about my life that you didn't want to know, it's not like you can just unknow it. And models
Right.
have a lot of the same problem, right? Is we can't just train it back out. It's in
Yeah.
the model now. So those models are polluted or corrupted by knowledge maybe they shouldn't have. And that's part of the problem that, of course, ChatGPT and the other and Bard and all those others work on, is like how to control for what information it does take in.
And both you and I'm sure that we both saw this through Stable Diffusion a couple years ago. I mean, not even a couple years
Mm-hmm.
ago. Maybe it was like last year where it was bad data in and bad picture out, right? Because it's like it was seeing pictures that it had made
Right.
6 months earlier, thinking that it was the truth. Like that's when it started thinking like that humans had 3 arms.
Yeah,
Yet it
sure.
really didn't,
And this will keep happening.
So where can people find out more about you and Traceroute?
I don't really have a big presence anywhere particular these days, except that I'm on Mastodon at Hachyderm, Rennis at hachyderm.io. And otherwise I can be found on GitHub, or come find us at Traceroute and somebody will get a hold of me.
Cool, perfect. So I'll put those links below. And for those who are watching, feel free to listen to Amy and the other cast at Traceroute over at the links below. I'll put them in. And congrats on your launch on season 3 of Traceroute.
Thank you so much.